Where does this leave Apple?
Look, I mean, Apple is really the poster child for the U.S.-China UFC battle, and that's why there's a lot riding going into G20. You know, we believe it's actually worth about $20 to $25 to the stock. Because remember, they're not just impacted on the demand side, but on the supply side. With Foxconn, that's where they bet the farm in terms of the mass amount of iPhone manufacturing. So in our opinion, this is really a fork in the road situation for Apple. Right now, really an innocent bystander, but it comes down to if we get a trade deal, that's a stock that's going to go meaningfully higher in our opinion.
So, Sarah, look, it's not the first time we've heard differing messages from the president and members of the administration, but what are we supposed to make of this?
So I think that Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, his comments are of no surprise all along in this process. You know, even through the ups and downs, he's sort of been the happy-clappy member of Trump's cabinet who's, you know, along with people like Larry Kudlow, a White House economic advisor, has sort of always had the view that a deal can be made. In fact, Mnuchin himself last year presented Trump with a deal that he had made with China, and Trump rejected that. So, you know, I think he's the markets guy. He's from Wall Street, and he wants to appease people. He definitely doesn't want to make a panic ahead of this meeting, for sure. You know, Trump himself is saying that he may go forward with these tariffs, and that's really what matters. If this meeting doesn't go well, Trump is ready to move forward with the tariffs. Of course, it could go swimmingly, and they could end up having a deal to have more talks. That seems like a pretty likely scenario as well. But you know, reaching that deal ultimately in the weeks and months ahead, even if they agree to keep talking, that's where the difficulty lies.
So, look, Dan, what do you imagine, let's say Apple as an example, executives are doing right now? Is it simply a wait and see, or are they actually drawing out different scenarios whereby if the meeting doesn't go swimmingly, as Sarah says, they have a plan B?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely hedging their bets. I think starting to study potential alternatives outside of China, but we've talked about realistically only 5 to 7% of production could maybe go to an India or Vietnam, best case in the next 18 months. So that's why those are long-term plans. But right now for Apple, even though they need to hedge their bets a bit, that's why Cook continues to be a pseudo-ambassador, you know, really between U.S. and China. They are the poster child for this trade war, and that's why it comes down to if the $325 billion never happens, this is all noise and Apple makes new highs.
All right, so Sarah, this is now happening in a matter of days. What are we expecting in the lead up?
So, you know, this all came together quite quickly in terms of, you know, the two leaders of the world's biggest economies meeting. You know, it's come together in a bit of a haphazard fashion. And so the agenda, of course, has sort of been evolving. You know, Trump and Xi, when they met in December at the G20, it was sort of the same scenario, and they did manage to come out with a bit of a truce. So I think that's the ultimate outcome. They can talk about the bits and pieces of the deal, but ultimately, if they're giving their trade negotiators a mandate to move forward and to try and come up with a deal, that's sort of the best case scenario at this point. And I think, you know, companies, that's sort of what they're watching for, you know, just to buy a little more time. Of course, them even coming up with a deal just leaves this total environment of uncertainty. And I think, you know, businesses are working around that. We had this important story about Micron finding loopholes in export restrictions that have been put on sales to Huawei. And, you know, companies more and more are just trying to find loopholes and ways around the tariffs and other restrictions.